Hello and welcome to the session. In the earlier sessions, we had seen about the history of the internet and applications of the internet. In this session, we will see that how does internet work. I am Professor V. V. Subramaniam, Director, School of Computer Information Sciences, IGNOU, New Delhi. So, as we are aware, the internet is a network of networks. If the network at your university, your employer or in your home has internet access, it connects to an internet service provider. Many ISPs are big telecommunication companies like Airtel, BSNL, Reliance Jio, etc. These providers connect to one another, exchanging traffic and ensuring your messages can get to any other computer that is online and willing to communicate with you. The internet has no center and no one owns it. The internet was designed to be redundant and fault tolerant. It means that if one network connecting wire or server stops working, everything else should keep on running. Rising from military research and work at educational institutions dating as far back as 1960s, the internet really took off in the 1990s when graphical web browsing was invented, and much of the internet's operating infrastructure was transitioned to be supported by private firms rather than government grants. If you want to communicate with another computer on the internet, then your computer needs to know if you want to communicate with another computer on the internet, then your computer needs to know the answer for 3 questions. First one is, what are you looking for? Where is it? And how do we get there? So these are the 3 questions that needs to be answered. The computers and software that make up internet infrastructure can help provide these answers. Let us look at how it comes together. When you type an address into a web browser just like Google, you are telling your browser that you are looking for that particular website. For example, if you are putting the URL Uniform Resource Locator as www.google.com, then the protocol that you are mentioning over there, the HTTP, that is called as the Application Transfer Protocol. www is the host name, Google is the domain name, and .com is the top level domain name. So this is the split of the Uniform Resource Locator that we are putting onto the web browser. So the HTTP you see at the start of most of the web addresses stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. A protocol is set of rules for communication, sort of like grammar and vocabulary in a language like English. So the HTTP protocol defines how web browser and web servers communicate and is designed to be independent from the computer's hardware and operating system. It doesn't matter if messages come from a PC, a Mac and a huge mainframe or a pocket-sized smartphone. If a device speaks to another using a common protocol, then it will be heard and understood. The internet supports lots of different applications, and many of these applications use their own application transfer protocol to communicate with each other. The server that holds your email uses something called SMTP. It means Simple Mail Transfer Protocol to exchange mail with other email servers throughout the world. FTP is another protocol. The full form of FTP is File Transfer Protocol. It is used for how most web developers upload the web pages, graphics and other files for their websites. So you can see here HTTP, you had seen SMTP, you had seen the FTP. So even the web uses different protocols. When you surf to an online bank or when you are ready to enter your payment information at the website of an internet retailer, the HTTP at the beginning of the URL will probably change to HTTPS. S stands for secure. That means that communications between your browser and server will be encrypted for safe transmission. The beauty of the internet infrastructure is that any savvy entrepreneur can create a new application that rides on top of the internet. So let us see another protocol which helps you in the internet, that is the internet protocol, IP addresses. So every machine on the internet has a unique identifying number called an IP address. The IP here stands for Internet Protocol, which is the language that computers use to communicate over the internet. A protocol is the predefined way that someone who wants to use a service talks with that service. The someone could be a person, but more often it is a computer program like a web browser. A typical IP address looks like 216.27.61.137. So the whole IP address is of 4 numbers, 4 group of numbers. The 4 numbers in an IP address are called octets, OCTETS, because they give 8 positions when viewed in the binary form. If you add all the positions together, you will get 32, which is why IP addresses are considered 32-bit numbers. The octets serve a purpose other than simply separating the numbers. They are used to create classes of IP addresses that can be assigned to a particular business, government and other entity based on size and need. The octets are split into 2 sections. One is the net and the other is the host. The net section always contains the first octet. It is used to identify the network that a computer belongs to. Host, sometimes referred as the node, identifies the actual computer on the network. The host section always contains the last octet. We human beings have a hard time remembering that sort of 32-bit address. To make things easier, we can alias an IP address with a human readable name called a domain name. For example, at the time of writing, IP address can change. Google.com is the domain name used on the top of the IP address. 173.194.121.32 is its equivalent IP address. So this is the octet equivalent to the domain name google.com. So using the domain name is the easiest way for us to reach a computer over the internet. It will be very hard to remember those octet address. Instead, we have an alias name equivalent to that particular octet, that too a unique name for each and every octet. So let us study about the domain name system. In 1983, the University of Wisconsin created the domain name system which maps text names to IP addresses automatically. Here you can see each and every IP address is mapped to a text name. This way you only need to remember www.igno.ac.in, for example, instead of IGNO's website IP address, that is the octet. So, you can see here I had given a simple example instead of 173.194.121.32, which is the IP address of google.com. We can give the textable format, that is www.google.com. So, this will be very hard to remember when it is presented in the form of an octet, and it will be very easy to remember when it is presented in the form of a textable format. So, every time you see a domain name, you use the internet's DNS servers, that is domain name service servers, to translate the human readable domain name into the machine readable IP address. So, here the machines are working in order to map the IP address to a readable format. Top level domain names, also called first level domain names, which includes .com, .org, .net, .edu and .gov. So, within every top level domain there is a huge list of second level domains also. Every name in the .com top level domain must be unique. The leftmost word like www is the host name. It specifies the name of a specific machine with a specific IP address in a domain. A given domain can potentially contain millions of host names as long as they are unique within that domain. DNS servers accept requests from programs and other name servers to convert domain names into IP addresses. When a request comes in, the domain name server can do one of the four things with it. It can answer the request with an IP address because it already knows the IP address from the requested domain. It can contact another DNS server and try to find out the IP address for the name requested. It may also to do this multiple times. The third one is, it can say that I do not know the IP address for the domain you requested, but here is the IP address for a DNS server that knows more than I do. It can return an error message because the requested domain name is the invalid or does not exist. This is the fourth thing that the DNS server can do. So, you may be having a question, who owns a domain name? You cannot buy a domain name. This is so that unused domain names eventually become available to the use again by someone else. If every domain name was bought, the web would quickly fill up with unused domain names that were locked and couldn't be used by anyone. Instead, you pay for the right to use a domain name for 1 or more years. You can renew your right, or your renewal has priority over other people's applications, but you never own the domain name. Companies called registrars use domain name registries to keep track of technical and administrative information connecting you to your domain name. So, how to get this domain name? Go to a registrar's website. Usually there is a prominent get a domain name option. Click on it, fill out the form with all required details. Make sure especially that you have to misspell your desired domain name. Once it is paid for, it is too late. The registrar will get you know when the domain name is properly registered. Within a few hours, all DNS servers will have received your DNS information. So, internet servers and clients. So, internet servers make the internet possible. All of the machines on the internet are either servers or client. So, suppose if you have a desktop connected to the internet, you will be using a browser which is called as the client, and that particular client is requesting the information which is stored on the server. The machines that provide services to other machines are servers, and the machines that are used to connect to those services are called as the clients. So, this is completely a client server architecture. There are web servers, email servers, FTP servers, application servers. Likewise, there are several servers which we can quote over here, placed all over the world. When you connect to www.igno.ac.in to read a page, you are user sitting at a client's machine. You are accessing the IGNO web server. The server machine finds the page you requested and sends it to you. Clients that come to a server machine do so with a specific intent. So, clients direct their request to a specific software server running on the server machine. For example, if you are running a web browser on your machine, it will want to talk to the web server on the server machine, not the email server. So, whenever you are trying to contact the machine or the server which it intends to, only that particular machine only responds. A server has a static IP address that does not change very often. A home machine that is dialing up through a modem, on the other hand, typically has a IP address assigned by the ISP every time you dial in. So, this is all about the dial-in connection. That IP address is unique for your session. It may be different the next time you once again dial in. This way, an ISP only needs one IP address for each modem it supports rather than one for each customer. So, let us see what are ports and HTTP. Any server machine makes its services available using numbered ports, PORTS, one for each service that is available on the server. For example, if a server machine is running a web server and a file transfer protocol server, the web server would typically be available on port 80 and the FTP server would be available on port 21. So, clients connect to a service at a specific IP address and so a specific port number. Once a client has connected to a service on a particular port, it accesses the service using a specific protocol. Protocols are often text and simply describe how the client and server will have their conversation. Every web server on the internet conforms to the hypertext transfer protocol. In short, you can call it as the HTTP. So, networks, routers, NAPs, internet service providers, domain name servers and powerful servers all make the internet possible. It is truly amazing when you realize that all this information is sent around the world in a matter of milliseconds. The components are extremely important in modern life. Without them, there won't be no internet, and without the internet, life would be very difficult indeed for many of us. So, let us see a DNS example. Let us say that you type the URL www.ignou.ac.in, that is the web address for Indira Gandhi National Open University, into your browser. The browser contacts a DNS server to get the IP address. A DNS server would start its search for an IP address by contacting one of the root DNS server. So, this is the second step. In the third step, the root servers know the IP addresses for all of the DNS servers that handle the top level domains, that is nothing but whether it is .com, .net, .org, .gov, etc. Your DNS server would ask the root for www.igno.ac.in and the root would say, I do not know the IP address for www.igno.ac.in, but Here is the IP address for the .ac.in DNS server. So, it is redirecting to another DNS server. Your name server then sends a query to the .ac.in DNS server asking if it knows the IP addresses for www.igno.ac.in. The DNS server for the com domain knows the IP addresses for the name servers handling the www.igno.ac.in domain, so it returns those. Your name server then contacts the DNS server for www.igno.ac.in and asks if it knows the IP address for www.igno.ac.in. It actually does, so it returns the IP address to your DNS server, which returns the IP address, which returns it to the browser, which can then contact the server for www.igno.ac.in to get a web page. So, this is the whole process of connecting to the particular website once the URL is given on the browser. So, this is a complete life cycle right from giving the URL onto the client, that is the browser, till you receive the information back onto the browser. So, before concluding this particular session, let us recap. In this particular session, we had seen how does the internet work. So, in this session, we had come across various technical terminology like the DNS, like the IP address and the browser, server, and then various network components. So, all these network components in collaboration is helping us in order to browse by sitting before the computer if the system is connected to the internet. With this, I will conclude this particular session. Thank you.